This show is produced by the Harwood Podcast Network.
Hey there, I'm Cameron Harris. We love making this show available to you free of charge, and you can help keep it that way by making a contribution to our Karma Jar or by becoming one of our sponsors. To learn more, visit our website. Hey there everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sketchup, a 3D toolbox. Now, as you can see, we are on a brand new set. I'm really excited about this. I'm also really excited about today's episode because I'm going to be talking about something that we haven't covered at all on this show before, and that is photorealistic rendering in SketchUp. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, let me explain. When you look at a model in SketchUp, normally it looks pretty good. There are usually some shadows. It calculates, different textures. You can add photo textures like brick or wood, and that's good for modeling. But what if you want it to look even better? What if you want it to look like it would when you actually build that house or when you redesign that room? What if you wanted something that looked like it was a photo rather than a 3D model? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, SketchUp out of the box doesn't support the ability to create photorealistic renderings of a model. You need a plugin to do that. And that plugin is called IDX Renditioner. Now, there are a bunch of different plugins out there that'll do photorealistic rendering in SketchUp, but I've chosen IDX for this episode because it's really nice. It's very simple and yet still very powerful if you want to delve in and really kind of start tweaking some settings. And also, it works on both PCs and Macs. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do is download the IDX plugin, which can be found at IDX's website at idx-design.com. Just go up to the IDX drop down here and choose IDX Renditioner. We'll go ahead and click on that. Now, you can see here that they have a summer special right now. Normally, it's about $200. Now, it's only $150. Now, if you want to, you can go ahead and get the full version. It's pretty much the same features. But for this one, we're going to go with the free version, which if you look over in the sidebar, they have the free version of Express. We'll go ahead and click that. So we'll go ahead and click on either the PC version or the Mac version, in my case. And then it's going to ask you to fill out some information just so you can download the free version. Don't worry about this, just fill it out, and then you'll get an email with instructions on how to download and install the plugin. Now, I've already done that, so I'm not going to do that. Once you've gotten it downloaded and installed, go ahead and launch SketchUp, and you'll see what it looks like. Now, right off the bat, SketchUp looks pretty similar. Nothing seems to have changed, but you'll notice that we have over here, we have an extra tool palette. And let me move it over here so we can see it a little bit better. This is the IDX Renditioner palette, and this has a couple of different controls. For now, just go ahead and keep that up. You can close it if you want to, because like when you're modeling, you're not going to be really using this. This tool you use once you've finished your model and you want to export out some images of it that look real. So you could close it to free up space while you're working on your model and then just reopen it later. I'm going to stick it down here for now. We need to model something so that we can actually render a realistic view. So I'm going to start with something very simple. Really nice thing to start with for a test. I'm just going to make a very simple cube, right? And then I'll make a floor over here to go along with it. Push that up. There we go, done. IDX Renditioner uses the textures that you apply in your SketchUp model. Now, it only works with photo textures. So like right now, you can see these shapes are white. Just a white color. That would work. They would show up just fine in IDX. But if you really want to take advantage of the photorealism, you want to apply some kind of a photo texture. Now, we've done an episode on applying photo textures in the past, but you can also use, if I switch to the bucket tool, you can use any of the textures that are built into SketchUp. So here we have some wood textures, or in this case, let's go up and find some brick and cladding. And let's go with this first brick here. Let's go ahead and texture this big cube there. And then let's switch back over to the wood. And we'll apply some wood to this floor here. Now, you don't have to just use the textures that are built into SketchUp. Any photo will do. Remember, go back to our episode on photo textures if you want to learn how to add your own. Just make sure that It's best in general to use as many photo textures as possible rather than, if I go back over to the colors palette, just using a solid color like this. Now we can go ahead and immediately we can get a photorealistic render. And to do that, we go over to the IDX Renditioner tool palette here, and you can see we've got 3 buttons that look very similar, these 3 red balls. Now the one at the very top that's kind of more transparent, that is what's called a preview render. That will make a render that is very fast. It doesn't take very long to process, but it won't look very good. That's just kind of like, I just want to get a really quick idea of what this is going to look like, go. The next one is what's called the standard render. That is, that's if you want to spend a little bit more time calculating the render and you want it to look pretty good. And then we also have the presentation render. That's going to take a long time to calculate, but it's going to look amazingly good. Typically, if you want to just kind of get a good idea of what it's going to look like, I usually go with standard render. That's a nice balance between time and quality. Kind of evens out. So let's just go ahead and click on the standard render. And you can see it's calculating it out. There we go. So now you can see this is what the photorealistic render looks like. And if I drag it over, you can see the comparison. It already looks pretty good. The lighting effects are a lot better than those built into SketchUp. It's gotten rid of the kind of cartoonish lines that SketchUp has. Now, I do want to point out one thing. This is the one big limitation of the Express version of IDX. This photo is limited in resolution. In fact, let me just look and see how big it is. 640 by 480. That is as big as the images that you create in IDX Express can be. They can't go any bigger than that. The full version, you can do things that are really high resolution and really high quality. But for the Express version, you can do just the smaller images, but it's still really, really good and really fun to play around with. So this is looking pretty good, but let's start exploring some of the settings in IDX. So I'll go ahead and right-click on the brick texture, and you can see down here we have a thing called IDX Renditioner Material. Now this is where having a photo texture comes in really handy, because if I were to just create, let's say, a regular old cube over here, this does not have a photo texture. I right-click on it, and I click IDX Renditioner Material. Well, I have no settings. Everything's grayed out. But I'll go ahead and delete that. If I right-click on something with a photo texture like this brick, and I choose IDX Renditioner Material, then I have a couple buttons. The brick antique, that's what the texture is called. That's what the actual image is called, which is interesting. You never see the name in SketchUp. We go and click that, and then you can see it gives us a little preview of what that texture looks like, and we have some settings here. These are only available if you're modifying a photo texture. Now, the first thing we have here is bumpiness. So we can actually have, even though the texture is technically speaking on a two-dimensional surface, just a face in SketchUp, when IDX renders it, it can add bumps to it. It can make it more rough rather than completely smooth. So if we were to drag this slider all the way to the left and say completely smooth, it would be like just a two-dimensional face. No texture at all. But if we were to drag it all the way to rough, it would be extremely rough. There would be a lot of depth to it. And it uses the luminance information in the image to actually make it look, like in this case, the brick. It would actually make the brick stand out and the mortar be further back in, give it a lot of really nice depth. For now, let's keep it kind of maybe a little bit towards rough. Reverse bumps, that reverses the bumpiness, so that things that would normally be sticking out would be pushed back in. Reflectance. This tells how much light the material will either absorb or reflect. If you have it just completely absorb, it's very dark because light isn't reflecting off of it into the virtual camera. But if you say reflects, it's going to be very bright because it's reflecting a lot of light. In our case, we're going to set it maybe medium, maybe a little bit lower. And finally, have finish. This kind of affects how shiny it is, really. You have a few options. You have matte, you also have plastic, varnished, polished, you have a couple metals. And this is interesting too, you have mirror. Mirror is one of those things that IDX is the only thing that can do. SketchUp, you cannot create a mirror. You can create like a silvery looking face, but you can't create a mirror that actually reflects other things in the model. With IDX, you can do that. But in our case, we're just going to keep it at matte. And we'll go ahead and click OK. And I don't need to do this to every single face. You notice that when I right-clicked on it and clicked on Brick Antique, that affects every instance of that texture in the model. So just affecting this one face, it doesn't affect that face, it affects that texture. So anything that we call, that is the Brick Antique in SketchUp will be that it'll have the same bumpiness, reflectiveness, and the finish that we set up. And then let's do the same thing for the wood. Right-click and choose IDX Renditioner Material. And Wood Floor, click on that. And now it gives us a nice little preview. So in this case, this is a wood floor. Now in this case, a wood floor is typically very smooth. So we're going to drag it all the way to smooth. We don't want any bumps. And reflectance. Let's say we want it to be a little bit of a shiny floor. We'll go ahead and drag it towards reflects a little bit more, make it a little bit brighter. And the finish. Let's say we wanted to go with polished. Now you can see this is where having a preview is really handy, because you can see with polished it's almost like a mirror itself. That's a little bit more than what we want. Let's try, instead of polished, let's try varnished. That's a little bit more like it. It's not quite as reflective. And let's go ahead and hit OK. And the one tricky thing about working with IDX is that it can't calculate it as you're adjusting these settings. So once you click OK, you can't see it because you're still looking at the SketchUp view. So we'll have to re-render this. Go ahead and click the standard render button again. And you can see that this is what it looks like now. Pretty interesting, pretty big difference, isn't it? Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit here. You can see that the floor is much brighter because we've made it very shiny. And our brick has a lot more depth, a lot more texture to it. So that's pretty cool. Another thing that IDX can do is, with IDX, you can actually play with light sources. So we could add a lamp into this. Now normally in SketchUp, the light in SketchUp is just kind of an omnipresent light, or maybe a sunlight simulation, which we've talked about how to do in the past. But you couldn't add like a lamp and see, okay, how is this lamp, the light from this lamp going to affect the room? You couldn't do that before, but with IDX Renditioner you can. The first thing you're going to want to do is go up to Window, and then go to the Components right here. And that's going to open up this window here that has components. Now, components is kind of like pre-built models in SketchUp. They have things like basic furniture and things like that. Compared to the 3D warehouse, the selection is really quite pitiful. So I always go to the 3D warehouse for things like furniture and plants and pre-done models. But in the case of IDX, they have a category of all of these lights that you can start with. And you can tweak the settings for all of these if you want, but they're a really nice place to start because all the settings have been taken care of for you. So just go to the IDX category. Like this, you can see we have component sampler, dynamic components training, a couple different categories, but we also have IDX Renditioner lights. Click on that, and you have all these lights. So let's scroll through and find a light that we like. Let's go with, we got this floor lamp here. We click it once, and then when we drag it into our model, we can place it, let's say, there. And it comes in and it behaves just like a normal model. But it's got some special IDX Renditioner settings applied to it, which you could apply yourself, but it's a lot easier if you just work with a pre-built lamp. You see that over here we have this little light bulb in the IDX Renditioner panel. That's called lighting. Let's go ahead and click on that. And what we have here is these are the different light sources that IDX will use to calculate the lighting in your photorealistic rendering. Now, if we were to turn off natural lighting, that's the equivalent of turning off the sun. Now, we could just tweak it so it's a little bit more dim. Let's just drag it towards dim. We can even choose lighting conditions, whether it's a clear sky or it's a hazy day, or whether it's night. We can do that too. Let's just tweak it to dim and hit OK. And let's render again. And you can see here, now that we've turned off the sunlight, or turned it down, rather, you can see the effect that this light is having. You can see this hard line here where the lampshade kicks in. You can see how right here it's very bright, and then it kind of tapers off as you move out. So that is the kind of stuff that you can do in IDX. It's pretty impressive. You can have multiples of these lights going around, and you can actually adjust the brightness and intensity of the lights. And we'll probably talk about that in a later episode. But this should get you started with just kind of toying around with it. Maybe import a model that you've already completed of a house or a room or something like that, and start adding photo textures and tweaking the settings in Renditioner. And you can end up with some pretty amazing images. Now, until next time, be sure to visit our website at www.harwoodpodcast.com. There I'll have the show notes for you, where you can download lesson files, and you can get a link to where you can download IDX Renditioner for yourself. And if you have any questions or comments for me about the show, please send me an email at cameron@harwoodpodcast.com. Until next time, guys, I'll just say goodbye and good modeling.